So I normally film some kind of birthday video every year, whether or not it's on this channel or maybe it's a blog post. I like to use this time as a way to reflect on the past year. I think if I would have filmed this video a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it wouldn't be the same thing that we're getting. If I had been able to sit down with myself at 20 and have the conversation that we're about to have and all the things that I'm about to share with, as I've really kind of gotten past the point that you take in your 20s of being the version of yourself that checks all the lists and does all the things that you should be doing. When you go from that phase, you start saying, okay, what does it look like for me to be happy? What does happiness even mean for me? That being said, we're having the conversation that I would have had if I would have known that I should have this with myself at 20, 22, 25, anytime in my 20s before I hit 30, I think we'd be a lot farther. So let me dive into what I would tell my younger self at 33. So the number one thing that I think is something that I have to check myself on consistently even now is learning how to have tough conversations with myself, but also learn how to forgive yourself. And this really kind of comes with some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about in this video, but I think one of the healthy things that you can kind of do for yourself is develop a way in which you can have a conversation with yourself outside of your head. Develop a way where you can be able to actually hear the thoughts that you're thinking and not just think the thoughts that you're thinking, because so much of what we think and say to ourselves we do without even realizing it. So I will write letters to myself. If I'm feeling like maybe that's not working, I will record a video. Sometimes if I'm just kind of in that space of there's an emotion that I need to get through, and so this is my human design type. I'm a projector, if that's your vibe and that helps you in any way. I'm somebody who sometimes I just need to pull it out of my brain a little bit, and I will maybe send a snap to a friend, but I will also, because I've gotten in the habit of just being able to speak it that way, I will also pick up my phone and record a video just talking to camera, knowing that that's kind of like a virtual journal for me. But learning how to have internal conversations with yourself and learning how to forgive yourself is part of the process of helping you move forward. And I think when you have these moments that you can actually acknowledge it and you can write it down and you can do all of these things, you give yourself a reference point later to be like, okay, am I actually moving on from this, or am I continuing to hold on to this? Or, why am I still stirring and stewing in this space? I really, like I said, hitting another birthday for me has been very much a, okay, what have the last few years been for me, and what are the things that haven't changed and why haven't they changed, and just being really honest with myself about all of that and why it hasn't changed and what I'm not willing to admit to myself. And I think those are the things that when you can find that vulnerability with yourself, we'll talk a little bit about that as we go into the day, but that is kind of the relationship that we aren't really ever taught to develop. I know there's more people going through therapy, there's more people kind of having those kind of conversations, but at the same time, it's something that's become really important to me because I'm sitting with me in the middle of the day. I'm the person who needs to become aware of my emotions. I'm the person who needs to be able to take a look at my actions and to live with my actions and to understand how it all adds up, because everything else around me might change. You might have a new therapist, you might have new friends, you might live in a new location, but you're still going to be existing with you and carrying on with yourself in this journey. So learning how to have those really deep, complex, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations with yourself, but also at the same time learning how to forgive yourself, learning how to take a step outside of yourself and say, hey, you messed up, you did this thing, this isn't the version that you want to be. We have to acknowledge it, we have to release it, we have to intentionally make choices to move forward and then go from there. But that in and of itself becomes such an intimate dialogue with you that it starts to really compound and change everything else in the rest of your in other relationships and just kind of how you exist in your everyday life. The way you treat yourself is the way you treat your friends, and I think we don't talk about this or acknowledge it enough, and it's something that I've really kind of begun to understand and has made me really sad, because I've realized just how much of a better human I could have shown up in certain relationships because I wasn't aware of just how unhappy I was with myself, how much I didn't like myself. All of these stories and all of this just stuff that you're kind of carrying underneath everything. It might be something you're not aware of. You just might feel like you're cycling through friendships, or things are changing for you, or you're never really quite connecting, or like people don't get you, you aren't feeling heard or seen. Like there might be some sense of victim mentality that you aren't even aware of. The bigger thing in that comes from a space of when you start to love yourself more. And I'm not just saying that in like a generic, like I buy myself a nice thing, or I treat myself to this, or I do that. Like I think sometimes that like love comes from just really like sitting in an emotion and like almost kind of emotionally hugging yourself in a moment where you realize just how small you feel, how vulnerable you feel, how unsafe you feel, how just completely unworthy you feel. Like all of the like inner stuff in you that you don't realize is a thing, when you start to acknowledge that a little bit more and love that a little bit more and heal that a little bit more and kind of become even more aware of that, it allows you to overflow in friendships in a way where things become, from an energetic standpoint, it just becomes a lot cleaner. It becomes a lot clearer. You're able to give from a space of abundance. I find that when and this has become a bit of a journey for me that I'm very much kind of still deeply working through, but like when you feel like people around you aren't giving you what you want or what you need, like you just feel like maybe friendships have changed, you aren't interacting with people in the same way, relationships aren't the same as they once were, you want things to be different, like whatever the case may be, I find that like really looking inward, and a lot of this comes from turning into gold. I've talked about this on the channel before, but like it's something that Amanda talks about, I think in module 2 in relationships, and she talks a little bit about it in business and like money. But you know, these things in this world around you and this reflection of what's happening is very much a space in which you forgot to love yourself, and when you forgot to show up for yourself, and the ways in which you forgot to give something to yourself. And so that kind of flips the head on it, and it becomes really about creating space and like doing the work at loving you more. So I'm trying to put words to something that's a lot deeper and it's a lot more emotional. It's a lot more of a thing that you're going to feel versus things that I can like give you verbally. But the more you become attuned to just your own inner thoughts, the more you create the skill and the ability to listen to the things that you maybe don't realize you're saying or thinking, or being able to have those kind of conversations with yourself. And the more you become aware of it, and the more it just starts transforming the space around you. And it is like any other kind of healing process. There's the grieving portion of it because you're very sad for the experience that you've gone through, but it ultimately leads to better friendships, deeper friendships, to more fulfilling friendships, and to just, again, feeling happier and feeling more satisfied in your life because you're getting into the emotional side for what you need, which creates more space for you to hopefully change your job, your life, your everything else to kind of meet in the space where those all get to do everything you want them to do. Number 3, just because everybody's talking about it doesn't mean everybody's actually talking about it. I think this is something that exists for maybe more of our generations, the ones that are younger than us, is that, you know, we feel like something's a much bigger deal than it is, or something might be an actual big deal and it is a conversation, but we're only so limited by what we see in any given space, by the news that we're being served, the algorithms that are producing certain content for us, the ways in which we're hearing kind of conversations. It's worth taking a step back if you feel like there's a topic or something that just feels like it's all around you, constantly around you, taking the step back to actually check in with how much you know about this, how much you need to know about this, if this is as big of a deal as it seems to be. Really kind of allowing space for your intuition to exist alongside all of the information that you're being given, and being able to make those judgments for yourself as to whether or not it's truly relevant or something that you need to dive into, or if it just feels like it's abundantly in your face because of where you are currently spending time. Which goes to number 4, check in with your unspoken boundaries. Now this, I talk about this all the time, where you're consuming content, how you're consuming content, where you're kind of living your everyday life in ways that maybe you don't realize, because when you're in front of a friend, you might acknowledge that you're in front of a friend. You almost have like unconscious checkpoints along the way because you have to get ready, you have to get in the car, you have to make the plans, you have to do all these things. So you are a little bit more aware between here, there, and like sitting down and spending time with somebody, if that's something that you want to do, or if it feels like it's a good thing, or if you feel like you are going to be okay in that space. Like you have more checkpoints in that path than you do when you get on social media, when you get on your computer, when you get on your TV, when you're consuming podcasts, any of that kind of thing. So I find that for myself, sometimes that when I'm in more of a like deeper, darker bubble, it's because I'm not allowing enough light content to come in. Like I'm not being intentional about consuming things that are funnier, like making myself laugh a little bit more. And some of this plays in a little bit more heavily if you're somebody who like works from home or has less like natural human interaction in the day, where, you know, you might be at work and you might be surrounded by humans, so somebody's gonna crack a joke and you're naturally gonna laugh throughout the day, versus if you're at home and you're working by yourself, or you're not like seeing a lot of people, your people that you're like hanging out with is the content that you're consuming. So if you're only consuming stuff that's really serious or really heavy or really dark, it can kind of bring you into that space. So keeping a check on that, keeping a mindfulness for how you feel about it. I know those of us who are on social media probably talk about this a little bit more because by default we are in these bubbles so much, but I do find that I see such a big difference, especially in my headspace, when I'm doing the things that I need to be doing and being really mindful about how I'm consuming content, where I'm consuming content, like my experience with that content, versus when I'm just kind of autopilot doing and not aware of how I'm interacting with any of the platforms or any of the things on any given day. There will never be time for it. It will just have to become a priority for you. I really love something that Georgie talks about. Georgie Stevenson talks about it in her Do It For Your Future Self kind of course, but she's talked about it some in like podcast episodes and things of that nature. And it's the idea that we all have buckets. We have these things in which we are constantly kind of prioritizing and putting energy into. And you know, when we're feeling really depleted, it's probably because maybe we've got one of our buckets is just not being filled. Like we haven't touched them, we haven't done anything with it, and it's not even on our radar, but it's something that fulfills us or is important to us. And I recently sat down and kind of did this again and looked at what my buckets are overall, and at the same time looked at what felt like they needed the most priority in this season for me. Because really, I will have seasons where friends feels like a higher priority bucket than family, and sometimes family feels like a higher priority bucket than friends. Art and creativity is one for me, and the ways in which I fit that in can be really small. That can be cooking a new recipe, that can be going to a museum or seeing a movie in theaters. Like they don't all have to be really complicated, but if you're feeling really unfulfilled, really unbalanced, just kind of, especially when you start feeling that burnout, becoming aware of just how you're actually balanced, like how much of yourself is being given in any direction. And for me specifically, I've been kind of pulling this into my mind space a little bit more and educating myself a little bit more on feminine versus masculine energy, and really kind of incorporating that like more relaxed, more received, more kind of completely opposite of the hustle vibe. The spaces in which you're just filling your cup and you're allowing the universe and like you're allowing yourself to be supported. So understanding what your priorities are, understanding your buckets, and then making sure that you're giving yourself space and time to receive and to kind of relax is going to do a lot for the burnout game, but it's also going to help you feel a little bit more in check with things, because we only have so much time. And sometimes it goes back to number one, like we have to be honest with ourselves about something, and it might not be a priority for us because it's just not a priority for us. Like it's not a thing that is something that we're ready to deal with, or something we feel like we have to deal with, and that's okay. Talk about that a little bit more in a second, but get honest with yourself about that. It's not that you don't have time for it, it's just not a priority. Now, as a former wellness blogger, I still feel like we have mental health and style content here, so I'm never really not going to be a wellness girly, but I do feel like finding a form of movement that you love, but also continually kind of checking in with that. I feel like this is a lifelong continual process, and you might find things that you like a little bit more, you might find things that you're particularly drawn to in different seasons. I feel like it's worth it just to be curious and open to trying new things, as well as understanding how your body functions. I think is really helpful to find somebody that's in physical therapy that is within your bubble that you have access to. I know it's definitely a bit more of a luxury, but it's something that's really amazing to be able to check in and say, hey, I'm doing this thing in the gym and it's not working quite the way that I want it to, and I'm feeling it here, here, and here. Like, what's going on with my body? Because that in and of itself has really transformed just my entire fitness experience over the last few years and working with a physical therapist. I will link mine down below. But understanding that and understanding how your body functions can really help you get the results that you want, but also continue to age in the way that you want to age in and feel even more supported with your fitness and your movements. But find something that you like. If you are a person who doesn't like working at home, or you like class workouts, like I go through seasons, I've talked about this in my contract video, where if I'm spending a lot of time at home and I'm just in this bubble, sometimes it's really important that I'm booking inconsistent Pilates classes or yoga classes or things outside of the house, because those become a bit of a socialization for me. Right now, I'm really enjoying doing more weighted workouts. I've kind of got this one specific plan that I'm into, and that's the phase that I'm in. But finding how that works for you and just being consistent about it, it doesn't have to be that you're always doing a really expensive class, or that you're signed up for this plan, or that you're doing this thing or that thing. It's that you're continually making it something that's in your routine. And that could be that for the next year, the only thing that feels good for you or fits your vibe is going for a walk every day, and that's your movement. But figuring out what that looks like for you, A, naturally helps manage your stress levels. B, is going to help you just age a bit better, stay healthy, stay happy, do all of the things that you naturally want to be doing. But it's also probably just going to make life a lot easier when you have that safe space for you that allows you to literally take a deep breath, because a lot of times exercise actually forces you to have to work your lung capacity a little bit more, and can help reduce anxiety just because of that. I don't know what number we're on, but I think this is going to be one that might trigger some of you, and we're just going to say it, and that is find hobbies that do not involve alcohol. Now, I read Quit Like a Woman a couple of years ago, and I've done a whole podcast episode on that that's on the other channel. I will link that for you in the description. But this specific thing for me is one of those that it's really helpful to have just in general. You're going to find that different friends have different relationships with alcohol, and it's going to be really challenging if you find that like that's the foundation of your relationship. If somebody needs to stop drinking, somebody's pregnant, you just find that maybe it's not working for your mental health, or you find that you need to do something different. Like, it's just one of those things that you probably don't realize how inundated it is into your life until you become intentional about finding hobbies that don't involve it. So this is more of a self-aware challenge for you. But if you find that that's like all of your hobbies involve some kind of drinking, naturally you want to explore the idea that there are other hobbies where that is not a thing that you're doing, just to see how you feel, just to see what life is like, to be able to experience that in a different capacity, because long term it's going to benefit you. But also, like, I don't know that we're all as aware of our alcohol consumption as we should be. And when we actively start becoming intentional about doing things that don't involve it, it brings like a new level of awareness to the table. So I would highly encourage you, look into hobbies that don't involve alcohol. So my next tip is going to be to take a trip by yourself. And if this feels a bit overwhelming, I'd suggest taking a class by yourself. So I did this a couple months ago, and this was the start for me, and I definitely would like to challenge myself to do at least one small trip by myself, and then maybe one international trip by myself. I know as a female it can feel a little bit scarier from like a safety perspective, so there are definitely ways that you can kind of navigate that a little bit more, and maybe even taking a trip by yourself to a city where you do know people, even if it's just you exploring by yourself and like experiencing what life is like to just really be in your own company. And that means like not spending your whole time with your head in a book, like being fully present without full distraction. You can have those times within, but I feel like the most beautiful and unique and wonderful opportunities present themselves when we allow ourselves to be a new person in a new space, just kind of there to see what the universe is going to bring for us. So like I said, I did this a few months ago with a cooking class, and it was one of the most uniquely divine experiences. And just like I was in a class full of older married people, and I live in a tourist town, so this is really common for snowbirds, and I happened to be near a woman who was single and in town. She had kids, but like she was 20 years older than me, and we had very similar life stories. We had some really big things that had both happened to us at different points in time, and it was just like it was supposed to. We were in the same place at the same time. We had the most beautiful time together, but that wouldn't have presented itself if I hadn't just allowed myself to kind of be blessed by a new experience, a new moment in time with a new human, and not kind of hidden behind other stuff. So take a trip, try a new class, do a thing where you just kind of allow the universe to bring you a new experience, a new joy, a new fun, and let yourself be excited. I love the Meghan Markle quote of like, leave room for magic in your life. I think that these kind of moments, the trips, the things where you just kind of have a loose plan, but you're allowing yourself to show up and be presented with amazing things, are some of the most beautiful experiences. I have to talk about journaling because I think that it's such a transformative habit, because it's such a healthy way of having a conversation with yourself. Now, I think there's probably other ways that you can do this. If you're creative, you might find songwriting, you might find story writing, you might find other things kind of fit that niche for you. You might find that stream of consciousness journaling is great for you because it takes the pressure off it. If you've heard about the Artist Way, there are people that really love stream of consciousness journaling, and sometimes that is really helpful. I like to do that with the iPad because I find that if I'm like handwriting things, sometimes my brain goes a little bit too slow and for like what I'm connecting with my hand, and I just overthink it. But if I'm typing, because I type so quickly, it just kind of all blots out of me. So I think journaling is one of the best habits that you can create for yourself, because it allows you to kind of have that conversation with yourself. And I will leave you with a journal prompt in saying that. And this is something I heard in a podcast last night. And kind of going back to some of the other stuff we've been talking about in this video, I think one of the biggest things that I heard, one of the best like kind of prompts that I heard, was if you're in a position where you're looking at something that you've been working towards, or you've been trying to manifest, or you've been trying to call into your life, and it hasn't happened, the reason for it not happening is probably because, whatever the case may be, it is more comfortable, it is more safe, it is more whatever for you to stay where you are right now. And these are these false narratives for you. And when you can kind of identify what the consequences are for you not making those changes and make them even more powerful, it can transform your life. So I will leave the podcast that I listened to, it's a short one, in the description box below if you kind of want to dig more into that journal prompt. But if you're listening to this and feeling a little bit stuck, I feel like that was worth sharing, because it's been something that I'm kind of pulling myself through right now. And I love those little moments where you're just like, oh, didn't think about it that way. That's healing your relationship with food. So much of us spend all of our time consuming the content of how we should eat, and how the internet tells us to eat, and all of the different ways in which food should and shouldn't work for us. And we don't always recognize that we haven't really found like what actually heals and nourishes our body, and the ways in which our body feels supported, and the things that maybe we're going through a phase and our body's a little bit more sensitive to a certain food because it is having issues being able to process that. Like, we are sensitive to it because it is triggering more inflammation for us. Our bodies go through different phases depending on how we're consuming food, how much we're consuming of certain things, and just what is going on in our everyday lives. So healing a relationship with food, becoming more aware of that, this is definitely something that's more challenging. I know specifically in the US, just because medicine is not the easiest thing to navigate in our country. I've heard a lot of girls, and this is something that's on my list to do, talk about the Dutch test and really understanding the interaction of our hormones and our bodies and all of that. But if you can find the path that works for you, and understanding how to nourish your body, support your body, understanding what your body needs, and being able to do it in a way that just allows you to understand that you are nourishing yourself and you are allowed to enjoy these moments, you will find that you feel a lot happier because you're able to love yourself a little bit more with your interaction with food. And B, we're all here trying to break some generational trauma, and plenty of us spent many years watching our parents diet after diet after diet. So healing your relationship with food and understanding like how your body is fueled and nourished, and like what combinations of food work for you, is super, super powerful in a way that you probably don't even realize until you kind of get into it. So I saw this really great TikTok the other day, and it was explaining the way that our body processes emotions, and the idea that it really kind of takes 90 seconds for our body to work through and metabolize an emotion. And my tip in this case is to learn how to feel your emotions. I'm very much somebody who didn't learn this as a kid. This has been a part of my adult process, which means I've spent many years spending time identifying them and feeling them and giving myself permission to feel them, and like learning how to acknowledge that, oh, I'm having this like emotional reaction. This is when journaling is a big thing for me. And I do this in my notes like all throughout the day. And when I'm just feeling like I'm kind of procrastinating, or I'm feeling like overwhelmed, or if I find myself like jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, I find that my internal habit for that is that I spent so many years using food to kind of push it all down, that because that is not what I'm reaching for, I'm reaching for something else to like shift the emotion for me. I'm reaching for this piece of content or that piece of thing, or I'm reaching for anything and everything that kind of can get me out of the space that I'm in that does not feel comfortable. And instead of doing that, I need to be able to take a moment to say, okay, I'm feeling this kind of thing. And when I can acknowledge that, like when I catch myself doing that, I can acknowledge that I'm feeling just triggered or unhappy or feeling really anxious or this thing or that thing or whatever. And I can kind of talk myself through it and then get myself on the other side of it. It helps me tremendously. I will find myself already kind of in the pattern of trying to not be feeling whatever it is I'm feeling. And the thing that I need to do in that moment is kind of bring myself back to the center to like actually work myself through it. But learning how to feel your emotions and being able to let them be a safe experience for you, however they may be, they're not good or not bad, they are just a part of your experience, is going to help you communicate a lot more. It's going to help you feel a lot more safe, and it's probably going to make you a lot less reactionary in certain situations. You can communicate what you need and what you feel and what you think and like what feels supportive for you more when you are able to do that for yourself. So finding ways to make that a safe experience for you is going to change your life. And my last two, no one knows what they're doing. No one knows what they're doing. Like, let me just say that now. And I think this is something that I kind of knew in my 20s, and coming into my 30s, especially in the last few years, is even more apparent. Especially in Southern culture, a lot of people get married really young. And so you'll see that experience of, you know, they get married really young, they have babies, they get divorced. And when you're following that path line, you might be checking off the boxes based on the experience of what you think you should be doing. I've seen a lot of friends, I'm probably included in this, you know, we kind of live out the experience that we experienced as kids. So I've seen a lot of friends whose parents got married really young. They've gotten married really young. My parents didn't get married till they were in their mid-30s. I am 33 and still single. So we kind of have to remember that there's not like one right way to do it. And even if you are doing all these things in whatever capacity in your 20s, it may feel like everybody's doing this certain path, or they knew what they're doing, or this experience is happening, but life will throw a curveball in and suddenly they don't know what they're doing and they have no idea what they're doing. And then we try to calibrate back to this space of this is what I should be doing, and that space doesn't actually exist. And the longer we spend trying to align ourselves with this space that we think that we should be in and these things that we should be doing, the farther off we get from where we actually want to be, and the farther off we get from being able to like acknowledge what works for us and what makes us happy. Because this is what we should be doing space doesn't actually exist. It's just, this is what we've seen and have experienced somebody else doing, so this is how we're calibrating our life, versus getting to know ourselves, taking time to understand ourselves, figuring out what feels supportive for us, learning how to feel our emotions, how to love ourselves, how to support ourselves, being open to creating new paths and opportunities, being open to life being different and unique and being the exception to the rule. Instead of living that way, we just spend a lot of time telling ourselves that we're wrong. We spend a lot of time dismissing any and every idea that comes in because we can't calibrate it or calculate it to something that we've already experienced and known. So if you start at a younger age and just recognize that like nobody knows what they're doing, and that half the time, for a good long while, everybody's going to spend all of their time calculating themselves according to everybody else and what they should be doing. If you can ditch all of that and start to walk the experience of what makes you happy and living in your own life and like really kind of becoming your own insulated space of knowing and intuition, it will save you a lot of time, but also just give you a lot more of a groundedness, because chances are, as you're going on that path and you're going on that journey, you're going to watch a lot of people who have followed the paths where they should be doing it, and they realize they haven't been happy for a really long time, and they haven't been happy, and they've stayed there. And now they feel like they've wasted all of these years. So when you can understand that there is not a thing that you need to be guiding and aligning to that's like for everybody, you can hopefully not be the person who wakes up at 50 and realizes that you are tremendously unhappy because you haven't been living a life that you want or aligns with you. And last but not least, one of my favorite Amanda Frances quotes: your desires are safe guidance. Learning how to listen to your intuition, learning how to lean into your own inner knowing and inner voice, and really allowing yourself to kind of dig into that is something that I wish I'd known when I was younger. And I have always kind of had this like natural ability that like I had to kind of follow in the direction of wherever I felt like I was being pulled. Like once I feel like I'm being pulled in a certain direction, it's really hard to get me off of it. I just tend to stay on the path until it feels like, okay, maybe there's a different direction that I need to be going. But digging into that space of trusting your desires and leaning into your desires, and then being able to kind of do all of the emotional and other deep work around it, it's a lot. But if you aren't living a life that makes you happy, if you aren't living a life where you feel connected to you, if you aren't living a life where yes, you may have a relationship or a partner or children or family or all of these other things that are bringing you joy, but if you aren't finding joy and contentment within yourself, you're not going to experience all of that to the fullest and the best that it can be. And a lot of that starts with you and getting to know you and loving you a little bit more, and being able to give space to the inner voice inside you that really is trying to speak and communicate and wants you to be the happiest version of yourself. So that is all I have for you guys today. This video is hella long, but I love you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I upload new videos every week. There's always style and mental health content on this channel, so I love being able to chat about that with you guys. Let me know in the comments below, if you're older, if you're younger, what you would add to this, what you would take away from this. Maybe if you're older than me, what wisdom you feel like you wish you would have known. I'd love to hear from you guys and just to see where you're at on your own personal journey. So thank you for spending another birthday online with me. I love you. It is a good day to have a good day, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys.